So welcome back to session 5 of our 12th annual Marine Money London Virtual Ship Finance Forum. Like I've been saying all day, Mia and I would love to have been with you in the Dorchester Hotel. Just after the last session, we would typically go to a cocktail party and enjoy a glass of wine and some snacks. That's not going to happen this year. I'm pretty certain it'll happen next year, and we're all looking forward to that. But nonetheless, we're very thankful for the medium which we have with these online webinars, and glad that we can meet with you all in this way. Our final session is entitled 2021, the year the world moves forward. Before we hand over to Matt McCleary, my colleague at Marine Money, to lead the discussion, we're going to have two presentations. The first presentation by Mr. Nick Owens, Chief Executive Officer of Idwal Marine. And the title of this one is Lessons from a Pandemic, Technical, Safety and Carbon Reduction. So Nick, I'd like to pass over to you, please.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. Thanks very much. Just start up my presentation. So for the next 15 minutes or so, I'm going to be looking at some of the key lessons that we've learned from the COVID-19 pandemic in 2020. In particular, I'm going to explore whether there's a positive lasting legacy of COVID and what that legacy might be, particularly as it relates to technical, safety and carbon reduction factors. Before I get into the detail, I just want to share with you a very short background about Idwal for those of you who don't know who we are. We are today one of the market leaders in delivering high volume, consistent, accurate ship inspections to the global maritime industry. We were established 10 years ago. We now have offices in the UK, in China, in Greece, and we draw from a technical resource pool of over 360 maritime professionals working globally, covering more than 800 ports across 75 countries. So before we look at some of the lessons learned from COVID, we're just going to quickly take a look back at a little bit of activity that we've seen in 2020. Certainly was a remarkable year, many ways, many struggles, many challenges, and despite the very best efforts of the global pandemic, we managed to continue to inspect ships in volume, eventually boarding over 2,000 vessels around the world. Now, for us, this really does validate our belief that the role of the marine surveyor remains one of the industry's most effective risk mitigation tools. And, to sort of coin a bit of a sporting analogy, this chart here shows Idwal's weekly inspection volume through 2020. In the first half of the year, as you can see here, very volatile. And as COVID-19 really began to take a hold, understandably, there was quite a lot of uncertainty. Many ship owners slowed down their transactional activities, deferred inspection campaigns, and kind of waited in the hope that everything would be back to normal soon. During March, April, we saw a significant drop in inspection volume, and this continued right into Q2. In Q3, Q4, we did begin to witness a recovery, and increased inspections became a real integral part of the industry's COVID response, and we saw a real lift-off. And other than a bit of a seasonal dip, we really did see an exponential increase in survey volume. Just to give a bit of context to that in terms of maybe some kind of related data, here's some data which was kindly provided to us by Vessels Value, which shows a very similar pattern between S&P activity in the market in 2020 and the overall inspection volume activity. Same dip, evident Q1, Q2, followed by an increase in activity throughout the second half of the year as the industry adapted and kind of returned to this normal that we now know. This really does support the view that although still in the midst of a global crisis, shipping really quickly managed to return to some form of normality through developing strong partnerships and through outsourcing. So what have we learned? What have we learned from, in terms of ship's condition, in terms of technical issues and safety, and even the impact on our collective carbon footprint? footprint. So firstly, despite the obvious challenges and with a huge amount of certification extensions, with exemptions being granted, deferments to dry dockings, missed inspections due to travel restrictions, we really have not witnessed anything close to a drastic downturn in asset condition as some might have predicted or expected. This is supported by our data. Here is a chart that shows all dry bulk inspection data from 2020 from inspections conducted by Idwal. Each blue dot here represents a ship that we've inspected and its corresponding Idwal grade on the y-axis. The line through the middle is showing the average condition grade across the dry bulk ships we've inspected, which, as we can see here, has been maintained pretty well throughout 2020 and has actually even lifted ever so slightly towards the end of the year. We can also see from this data that over half of the inspected fleet are maintained well above the industry average condition line. So broadly speaking, what can we say from this? Well, we can say that general asset condition is being maintained to acceptable levels and is not being obviously adversely affected by the pandemic. Similarly, same view, tankers, containers, where again, we're not seeing any drastic downturn in condition. If anything, we are witnessing some moderate improvement. So let's look at lesson 2. The pandemic has really shown us that whilst we've accelerated several remote surveying initiatives, we are quite a long way away from replacing the traditional surveyor as one of the industry's leading risk mitigation tools. Remote technology is still very much in its early stages of development, and crucially, the industry is yet to adopt any real standardization of remote surveying tools and technologies. Here at Idwal, we really believe that there's a big difference between basic validation of basic compliance, such as dates and running hours and certification, etc., and the assessment of more deep-rooted cultural issues and systemic problems on board ships. Now, the former can almost certainly be achieved by remote tools, but the latter almost certainly can't. So a blended approach to technology is needed, and we have certain tech tools at our disposal, all of which are designed to create efficiency, to increase the focus of surveyors on board ships, but not to replace them altogether. We also have to be really careful and mindful of the impact on our seafarers. At the moment, it seems many organizations are kind of patting themselves on the back for a job well done in terms of remote surveying. I'm not fully convinced that we've quite completed that job, and would even argue that we're in danger of simply burdening our already exhausted crew even further with the promise of better tech, which is not necessarily being executed to a high standard. Just to amplify that point, the Q4 2020 published results from the Seafarer Happiness Index, which is an initiative by the Mission to Seafarers and collates survey results from seafarers working at sea right now, suggest that many seafarers are seeing remote surveys as a burden and simply another transfer of duties back from the shore back to the seafarer. Third lesson that we've learned from this pandemic is that building key partnerships and a willingness to outsource has really become bread and butter of the COVID world that we live in. Without our trusted partnerships, we would simply not be able to maintain high industry standards that we're seeing through this slide deck. And as an example of this partnership approach to outsourcing, this chart here shows a sharp increase in inspection numbers from ship owners and managers in 2020 when compared to 2019. In 2019, Idwal as a business conducted 347 inspections for owners and managers directly. In 2020, this increased significantly to 730 inspections. That's a 110% increase in inspection volume. And what this effectively means is that owners and managers have still been able to continue conducting large-scale fleet inspection programs, keeping a close eye on their ships, keeping a close eye on performance, on condition, on welfare, even though their own technical people can't travel. A fourth lesson, is simply that data transparency and industry sources of data are still not good enough. At Idwal, we've amassed a considerable amount of data across a wide range of ship types. This data tells us a lot about how condition and risk is being managed across the sectors. And we use this data to inform our own surveys and risk management processes going forward. We can begin to enhance the role of our own surveyors rather than try to believe that we can replace them with technology. So we encourage data sharing. We encourage transparency of data in order to empower risk management processes. And we'd really like to hear from people who feel the same. And last, but by no means least, one of the key lessons we've learned through this pandemic is that the current crew change crisis that we're seeing in shipping is simply unacceptable and has become a genuine humanitarian crisis. Seafarers are very much the front line of global trade, and it's absolutely essential that the industry continues to come together to support initiatives that can help solve this crisis. So, although the pandemic has and continues to be a really challenging situation for us all, which in the main part has really seen a severe negative impact across all of our lives, we genuinely believe that there are some positives to take home and that there can actually be a positive COVID legacy. So what do we think that can be a legacy from this COVID situation? Well, firstly, an increase in transparency. We've seen a greater willingness to outsource internal functions, to explore new ideas, to come together as an industry. And we see this now more than ever before. It's really important that we continue this open, collaborative mentality and extend further into data sharing in open and transparent formats. As I've already mentioned, we've also seen a huge increase in outsourcing and partnerships, and undoubtedly outsourcing has been a key feature of the industry's COVID response. Many benefits to outsourcing, not least the fact that it saves time and money and can offer immediate access to a broader range of impartial and unbiased skill sets. And we've also seen the acceleration of technology and data. We've already explored remote surveys a little bit here, and there remains a huge spread across the tech solutions. And there's lots of technology options being discussed at the moment in shipping. And whilst we have to be careful not to overburden our crew, we all recognize, I think, that technology has a strong role to play in the future of our industry. And finally here, we've seen an unexpected carbon reduction dividend as a direct result of reduced air travel. So just quickly take a look at that carbon dividend. It certainly has been a real unexpected benefit. And although air travel obviously provides a crucial service connecting the world together, it has shown us to some degree that we can continue to operate our fleets safely and to a very high standard without jumping on a plane at a moment's notice. During 2020, Idwal almost eradicated air travel from our business, both commercially and operationally. This wasn't by choice, of course, but it has certainly led to a profound mentality shift in our own business, which as a result has accelerated our own carbon reduction goals. As a direct result of COVID, we have brought forward our own deadline to become net zero carbon business now by 2022. So to kind of conclude, COVID-19 has given us a head start on a number of initiatives which can contribute to a far more sustainable future and sustainable industry. It's accelerated some much needed initiatives in technology, data, and carbon reduction programs. And we really must avoid falling back into old habits. And I hope that COVID can leave our world with some kind of real positive legacy. Thank you very much for listening this evening, and I welcome any feedback or questions from anyone. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you very much. We don't have time for questions, I'm afraid, but if any do come in, we'll feed them to you, and you can perhaps respond by email. So, Nick, thank you very much for that great presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.